Hey, I'm so glad to be with you this morning, joining you online as well as you're watching this morning, and I'm so thankful to be worshiping our great and awesome God again this morning. And thank you, Ethan and worship team, for just leading us in that tremendous time of worship. I really feel like it sets a tone for where we're headed this morning, because you see, we've been on a journey for the last several weeks, a journey with Joseph, right? In the Old Testament book of Genesis, specifically chapter 37, we've been journeying through the life of Joseph. And so far, what we've learned in the life of Joseph is that God often uses the different scenarios of our lives that aren't exactly where we want to be, where we plan to be. He uses them as detours to ultimately get us to a place where he wants us to be. And we've been learning how these detours can often be uncomfortable, right? You know, this is interactive, so when I say right, you can say right? Right? Right, good, very well done. Yes, yeah. Nobody likes a detour. I have rarely ever met somebody who's like on a journey to some place and they come across a detour and they're like, woohoo! Right? Like, that doesn't seem normal to me. In fact, I remember Ashley and I were on a detour one time. On our wedding night, we were headed to this little cabin that I had rented on the lake shore of Lake Michigan. And it had a little jacuzzi. It was just kind of a nice, neat little cabin. And I thought it'd be romantic. Wedding evening. Clap. Thanks, Tony. So anyway, we're on our way there, and there's this bridge between where we are and where we need to be, and the bridge is out. And it's a really, short bridge, right? But it's out, so we have to go several miles out of the way to get to where we want to be. And it's in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, not highly populated, not a lot of streetlights around where we're at. It's just kind of like woods and forest and maybe a few houses scattered in between. And we're on this back road navigating this detour when all of a sudden, little Bambi decides to jump out in front of our vehicle, which it's not bad because it's a detour. I'm only going 35 miles an hour, right? Not a problem. So I'm driving along. Bambi runs out in front of us. Bambi's got plenty of time to make it across the road safely. I slow down to 25 miles an hour. And what I don't realize is that Bambi isn't confident. So as Bambi is running across the road and gets clearly into the other lane, there's this one car coming from the other direction, scares Bambi to death, turns around, runs back in front of our vehicle, thump, thump, all right? And I'm just you gotta be kidding me, right? It's our wedding night. Just think about this. That car drives off. There's no lights. There's no anything anywhere. We're in the middle of the woods on this detour. I'm in my suit. My wife is in her dress. And we're on the side of the road with a dead deer. I mean, listen, I love deer hunting, okay? But I don't love deer hunting that much. I can think of a lot of places that I would rather be on my wedding night. I did not want to be in that situation. And maybe you can think of some scenarios in your life like I just described. Not necessarily your wedding night, but maybe someplace you wanted to be, and there was a detour that was preventing you from getting there at the specific time that you wanted to be there. It was difficult. It was hard. And you know the feeling. I'm sure Joseph was feeling exactly this way. I don't want to be here because if you recall, Joseph, right, he was the favorite in his family, right? He got this special robe. He was the one who got to check on his brothers to see if they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. He even had this special wisdom and insight that allowed him to dream dreams and see the future and, interpret dreams. And some of those dreams were showing him that he was going to be a powerful person of influence. So he's like, yeah, giddy up, I'm ready to go. And then all of a sudden, he gets thrown in a pit. And his brothers are like, we're gonna kill you. And they're like, oh, no, let's sell him into slavery. Like, step up, right? And so they sell him into slavery, and he gets sold to a guy and then starts going well with him again, and he starts advancing. He's like, hey, this isn't so bad. And then he gets wrongly accused of a crime, and they chuck him in prison. So he's got to be thinking, like, if I'm Joseph, I'm thinking, like, how many times am I going to draw the short straw? Right? Is this ever going to end? This is like Nightmare from Elm Street. This is awful. He's just like detour after detour after detour, waiting for it to end. It's just things go from bad to worse to even terrible. I don't even know if that's a word. And then check out chapter 40, verse 1. Because he's like, how long am I going to be here, right? And then chapter 40, verse 1 of Genesis, these words kind of set us up for where we're going today. They are some time later. Right? Some time later. And we don't really like those words, right? Sometimes later. I know when I'm a kid and I'm asking my parents, hey, I need something, right? They're like, well, we'll talk about it later. What's later? I want to talk about it now. We don't like sometime later. We like sometime now. We like sometime immediately. Sometime right away. But Joseph's story doesn't work that way. Because, my friends, the truth is, preparation takes time. Preparation takes time. And God was preparing Joseph for an incredible work. But it was in his time. It wasn't in Joseph's time. It was in God's time. In his times. And so we continue on in verse 1 of chapter 40, and we read, some time later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the home of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. Well, after they'd been in custody for some time, there's that word again, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream, same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, why do you look so sad today? We both had dreams, they answered, but there's no one to interpret them. Then Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream, and he said to him, in my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, and I squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup back into his hand. This is what it means, Joseph said to him. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. Well, when the chief cupbearer saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation to the cupbearer, he said, pick me, tell me what my dream means. And he says, Joseph, I had a dream too. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh. It was like a bucket of donuts on my head, right? But the birds were eating them out of the basket. They were eating them on my head. And Joseph said, this is what the dream means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. He's like, okay, this is good. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole. Right? Not exactly the way he wanted it to go. And the birds will eat your flesh. It gets even worse, right? Didn't quite turn out the way he was hoping. And so the third day comes, and it was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. And he did lift up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials, and he restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. But the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot about him. He forgot about him. He forgot about him, if you read on, for 2 more years. It wasn't like, oh, we forgot about him for a month or we forgot about him for a week. We forgot about him for 2 more years. So if we recap this, after Joseph had been thrown in prison, it was some time later. Don't know how long that was. Maybe a year, maybe 2. Some time later that he encountered these officials of Pharaoh. So he'd been in prison for a long time. Sometime later, he encounters these new prisoners. And then sometime after that, he's got these dreams going on. And Joseph interprets them immediately. He interprets them right away. And then in 3 days, they're fulfilled. And Joseph's got to be thinking at this point, this is my way out. I'm going to finally get out of here. This is the opportunity I've been waiting for. Hey, please tell the king. Tell the king that I'm down here and what I've done for you. Help me get out of this prison. And so everything's looking good for him. And then what happens when the cupbearer is restored? He forgets about him. 2 more years, and he's got to be thinking, but what about me? What about me? God, have you forgotten me? Why do I have to wait for so long? And my friends, if I can be honest with you, that's often the way detours work. They require us to wait. Detours require us to wait. They require us to be of us to be patient, to wait on God. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't like waiting. Sometimes waiting is hard. A few years back, again, Ashley, you seem to be like the focus of my stories this morning. Give her a hand. It's hard to be the focus, right? So that made her even more uncomfortable. It was totally awesome. So anyway, back when Ashley and I were first married, it was early on, kind of like it is now in deer season, and it was I think it was October, and the weather was really nice, and I had this stuff. I can't find it anymore. It's called Khmer deer buck juice, and they probably made it illegal because it worked so well. But like I just started spraying it on everything, and like bucks just started coming out of the woods. It was amazing. I saw like 20 different bucks that year. But anyway, it was early on. I had done some scouting. I had found this spot, and I got up in my stand, and I was ready to hunt. And I hadn't really seen anything. I'd been in my stand since like 6:30 in the morning. It was now like 9 o'clock in the morning. Been there for like 2.5 hours. I got about an hour and a half to go, and then I'm going to be done with my sit. But as I'm sitting there about 9 o'clock, the sun starts to beat down on me. And in all my layers of clothing, I start getting warm, and I start to sweat. And then all of a sudden, I can hear this zzz. And I'm like, you know? And you know what these are, right? They're mosquitoes. Now, like, I love down here because you got all these things you call mosquitoes. But in Michigan, our mosquitoes are like small aircraft, okay? It's like if you lose a liter of blood on a mosquito bite, that's a good thing, right? So, like, these mosquitoes are, like, attacking me. I'm sitting there, I'm sweating, and I start to think, I'm an idiot. Who in their right mind would be sitting out here in their deer stand with mosquitoes, like, when it's hot out, and all the smart deer are sleeping because it's hot out? And I start thinking about my wife, and I'm like, you have this beautiful wife back home, and she would love it if you, like, took her out on the town today. If you just, like, went shopping, she would thoroughly enjoy it. And I thought, makes sense to me. And so I, like, pack up all my gear, and and I tie my bow on my string, and I lower it down to the ground, and I get my pack and my safety harness, and I undo it, and I put it on, and I'm just about ready to go down the ladder. And I take this one last look around. I'm looking. Nothing. So I'm like, all right. So I turn around, I get on my ladder. It's like 20 feet in the air, and I climb down, and as soon as I hit the ground, I hear this deer blow at me. And I turn around, and no joke, Bigfoot is standing there. Like this deer is outside its ears and antlers, and like there's like lights on the top of his antlers for airplanes because this thing is so big. It's like monster buck mania. And I'm standing there on the ground, and my bow's on the string, and I'm like, get it off. I mean, I'm trying to get it off and get an arrow in it and get turned around in my release. And this thing just kind of like turns around, flips his tail off, and just like hops away. Right? I'm like, oh my goodness. If I'd have waited for just 5 more minutes, right? If I'd just waited 5 more minutes, things could have ended up completely different. But I got impatient. I got tired of waiting. And because I got tired of waiting, I missed a huge opportunity. Now, maybe that doesn't seem like a huge opportunity for you, but for me, it was a huge opportunity. Waiting is hard. It's not easy. Waiting is hard, especially on a detour. I mean, how many of you guys, you're at the restaurant, and there's like a line a mile long at the buffet, and you go up there and you wait in line, right? No, we don't do that. We hate waiting in line. None of us are like, woohoo, I get to wait in line. We don't do that. Right? We want to get there now. Waiting is hard, especially when we're on a detour, especially where we're not where we want to be. Waiting is hard. Yet when we look at Scripture, what does God's Word have to say about the subject of waiting? What does it have to say about God's timing? Take a look with me at the words of the prophet Isaiah in chapter 40, verse 31. I love this. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. Those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. In other words, if God sends you on a detour, or if you're on a detour today, you can be sure He'll provide the strength for you to get through it. Look at Lamentations 3:25. It says, the Lord is good to those who wait on Him. He's good to those who wait on Him, to the soul who seeks Him. As we're waiting, God is working. It's kind of like, I picture it like a dam holding back a river. You guys know about dams here, right? You've got multiple of them. There's giant lakes everywhere. There's sirens that go off if the dam breaks, because if the dam breaks, there's going to be a little trickle of water, right? No! That dam breaks, look out! Because when you put the dam up in the river and it blocks the water, the power in that river, it just builds and builds and builds, and then when you release it, right? There's power in the waiting that's going on. You might not understand it, you might not see it, but like Joseph, you can believe it. God's timing is perfect. It's perfect. Just as the Apostle Paul tells us in Romans 5:6, listen, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, while we were in the pit, while we were stuck in the difficult situation, when we were on our detour, Christ died for the ungodly. At just the right time, He unleashed His power and brought us freedom, delivered us from the pit. Detours require us to wait, but it is worth the wait. It's worth the wait. There's power in the waiting. God is working in the waiting. But let me get practical here a minute, because we also notice in the text, or we notice in Joseph's life, that we there's instructions for how to wait. Instructions for how to wait. And verses 1 through 5 give us some specifics. You see, during his wait, during the some time, scriptures tell us that Joseph was assigned some new prisoners, the chief baker and the cupbearer to the king. And when they were assigned to Joseph, what did he do? He attended to them. That's what his responsibility was. They were his responsibility to keep watch over and take care of it. I can only speculate what that looked like, what that means. I mean, I have kids. Ashley and I have kids. We have to tend to them. What does that mean? It means we have to watch over them. It means we have to make sure they get food. It means like we got to make sure they use the bathroom and they get to where they need to be at the time that they need to be. So I don't know what it means when he says you have to attend to these prisoners, but it means he's got some level of responsibility. It means he has to do the job that his master asked him to do. He had to be obedient to his master and responsible with what he had in the circumstances that he was in. And then also notice in verses 6 through 8, Joseph goes a step further when scriptures say that those assigned to him looked dejected. They were sad. And isn't it interesting that in the midst of his own detour, in the midst of his own dejection, that he noticed somebody else feeling dejected. He could have been just like, sorry guys, I got my own problems. Toughen up, right? I've been in here for 2 years. You've been in here for I don't know how long, but I've been here longer. He could have been like that. But no, he noticed they were feeling sad. He was still concerned about those around so much that he served them by interpreting their dreams. The point being this, my friends, in our waiting, we need to be faithful. In our waiting, we need to be faithful. Although he was on what seemed like an endless detour, Joseph still worked hard. He was still faithful and served those over him. He attended those who were assigned him. He obeyed his master and interpreted the dreams of those around him on their own detours. He was faithful in his time of waiting. You know, sometimes if we're not careful, when we're waiting, when we're going through a detour, or life doesn't go the way we think it should, we can develop or get on what I call a poor me mentality. You know what I'm talking about? You know what a poor me mentality is? When something unforeseen happens, like a flat tire, or you get laid off, or something, you know, you get diagnosed with something, right? And instead of like trying to work in spite of the circumstances, we just kind of wallow in the situation that we're in. We just kind of sit on it, and we quit trying to find out what God is doing, and we just kind of take on this mentality, this attitude of, poor me, world's out to get me, nothing ever goes my way, can't catch a break, I don't even know why I try. Might as well just give up. Poor me. It's what I like to call Eeyore syndrome. Y'all remember Eeyore, right? Winnie the Pooh? Doesn't really matter anyway. Right? That's an Eeyore mentality. And I feel like I can get that way sometimes. I remember back a while ago talking to my dad. I think I was in college, and I was on the phone, and something wasn't going right. I was having trouble in classes, relationships, finances. I don't know what it was, but Dad just, kept trying to counsel me and offer me suggestions and say, hey, well, what about this? And, hey, next time, why don't you? And just over and over and over. And finally, I lost it. I was like, Dad, stop trying to fix it. I just need you to listen to me. And he goes, oh, let me get your mother. And so, because Mom would give me the sympathy that I was looking for, right? And listen, I'm not saying that we don't need empathy, we don't need sympathy. We do need that. What I am saying is we can't allow ourselves to camp there and wallow forever. It makes me think of Paul and Silas when they were in Philippi and trying to expand the kingdom of God by bringing the good news of Jesus to the Philippian people. And there was this girl suffering with the demon, and she was being manipulated, and they went to her and they cast the demon out in Jesus' name, and she was set free. It was amazing, a powerful work of God, and they were thrown in jail because of it. They were thrown in jail because they set this girl free. And at that point, you would think they could get a little Eeyore. Oh, we're in jail. This is awful. God, what are you doing? Come on. We're trying to expand your kingdom, and you put us in jail. Come on. What are you doing? Is that what they do? No, they're in jail. It's the middle of the night. Everybody's trying to sleep, and they're like, amazing. God, you're awesome. You're wonderful. Hey, shut up. Be quiet. You're noisy. We don't care. God is worthy. He is awesome. He is amazing. And they're singing praises to him. And what happens? There's an earthquake. And the jail doors pop open. And all of a sudden, everybody's free. And the guard sees it, and he's like, what's going on? Oh, no, the guards are going to kill me. They're not going to be happy with this. And he takes his sword, and he's about to fall on it. And Paul and Silas are like, no, don't kill yourself. We're all still here. We haven't left. This is God's doing. And the guard comes up, and he runs to him, and he says, sirs, what must I do to be saved? And the jailer and his whole family are saved. Strength rises as we wait on the Lord, as we hope in him, as we are faithful in the midst of our waiting. It's 2020, right? And most of us are like, can we just hit the skip button? Right? Can we just fast forward? Because it seems like what we're doing right now is waiting. Am I right? We're waiting for this vaccine. We're waiting for this treatment so life can get back to normal. Right? We're in a political year. We're waiting for this election to take place. You know, there's all kinds of violence and injustice and hate that we see taking place in the world and around us. And we're waiting for that to be done with. We're waiting for it to be over. But listen, my friends, because I have news. They may come up with a vaccine, but we're all still going to die. Do you know that? They can come up with a vaccine, but every one of us is still going to die. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully it's sometime in the distance, right? They could come up with a vaccine, but every one of us is still going to die. In November, we are going to elect a president. But you know what? It's not going to fix our problems. Sorry. Our country is still going to be broken. It's not going to fix our country. We can have protest after protest after protest. Not going to fix the condition of our hearts. It's just not. Only Jesus can solve these problems. Only Jesus can bring about the radical heart transformation that's necessary to deal with these issues in a way that's going to lead to life. In a way that's going to lead to the abundance of life. And so my question is, like Joseph, how are you obeying your master? Who said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And said, even in 2020, love your neighbor as yourself. How are you serving those around you, even while you wait? How are you being faithful to the gospel in your waiting? Those are the kinds of questions we need to be asking ourselves. But listen, because there's another practical piece we see here in Joseph's waiting that we need to pick up on, also noted in verses 6 through 8. You see, when he's given responsibility over these two new prisoners and notices them feeling dejected, where does he turn to? Just notice. He notices they're sad, and he wants to do something about it. Where does he turn to? What's his immediate go-to response? I mean, there's these guys, they're complaining, we're in jail, we don't deserve this. This is awful. I can't believe you've been here for 2 years. Why is this happening? We're having these dreams. What do they mean? How long? And where does Joseph go? Where does he turn? He turns to God. Even after all the time that's gone by, and the sometime laters, and the sometime laters, and the sometimes laters, when he's got every reason to complain, he turns and he goes to God. Verse 8 records Joseph's response and confidence. Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams. He's got confidence, friends, and this just blows my mind because he's got every reason to doubt God, to reason God has left me, and yet he still demonstrates and expresses his confidence that God, who interprets and gives him dreams, is still in control. He hasn't forgotten about him. He's still with him, which teaches us that in our waiting, we need to remember that God is still in control. In our waiting, God is still in control. That's amazing to think about. In our waiting, that we can be faithful because God is still in control. And knowing He is in control gives us confidence to continue on in our detours. I don't know if you know what it's like to be out of control. You ever experienced that before? I remember when I was 17, I got my driver's license. And it was in January, and I wanted to go get my hair cut. I think it was because my cousins or my girlfriend or something was coming over. Sorry, honey. And anyway, like I wanted a haircut, and I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I really like haircuts. Okay, it's weird, I know, but I just love the feeling of like somebody's hands in my hair, and getting my hair washed by somebody else, and the snipping and all that's going on. Sorry, I just like it. And that used to be awkward. But now my wife cuts my hair, so it's like it's not awkward anymore. But I remember I wanted to go get this haircut because my hair was ridiculously long, kind of like it is now. And so, in the morning, I went outside and I got my vehicle, and the snow wasn't that bad. I got my hair cut by a lady in our church, and it was like 10 or 12 miles down the road. And like the snow was coming down, but like I could still see pavement. And I was like, this will be okay. And so I get in my, 1988 Pontiac Bonneville, and I start driving down the road. And when I get out of town, the snow is thicker, and it's heavier. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to slow down a little bit. And so I'm driving on this. It's called Duck Lake Road, and it goes to Lake Michigan. And we're going up and down and roundabout and all kinds of things. And finally I make it to her house, right? And she starts cutting my hair, and I'm like, this is good, right? And she's cutting my hair, and I get my hair cut, and it's amazing. And then I got this burst of energy, and I'm excited, and I go outside, and the snow is big flakes and thicker, and now you can't even see pavement. It is just white. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get home? So I start driving, and I'm hanging onto the wheel, and I'm driving along, and I'm going slow, 30, 35 miles an hour. And I remember coming up this hill, and it was kind of like an intersection. There was a stop sign on this side and a stop sign on this side, and I had the right of way. And as I'm approaching that intersection, there's another car coming to the stop sign, and I'm watching, right? I'm trying to be a good defensive driver, and I'm watching, and this car's trying to stop, and it can't. It's sliding through the intersection. And I'm going along, and I'm like, I better stop. And so I hit my brakes, and I start sliding. I mean, I'm not slamming them on. I just gently pressing it. And my car starts to shift and turn. And I'm going like this, and I'm like, I'm not going to stop. And so I grab the wheel, and I gently start kind of trying to veer it the other way. And don't do this when you're driving, but I close my eyes, right? I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. I don't want to see right? And like somehow I would miss the car, right? And so like, here I am, I'm hanging onto the wheel. The last thing I can see is the vehicle's driver door in front of me. I shut my eyes, I turn the wheel, and I'm like, oh, no, this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad. And I hear this like little, and like I pull off to the side of the road, and there's like a paint scrape on the side of my vehicle. I have no idea what happened, but like just barely nicked our vehicles. And I don't know if you know what that's like. Like, it's like when somebody trips and falls or somebody drops something, and like in your mind you're like catching that item, but your body's not moving fast enough, right? And you feel out of control. I hate that. It's a horrible feeling. And sometimes in life we get on detours. Like Joseph in prison, where things just feel like they're out of control. We feel helpless to do anything, like we're sliding through life just waiting to crash. I feel like it's 2020. But listen, my friends, we serve a God who is very much in control. We serve a God who is very much in control. Remember the disciples out on the boat in Mark chapter 4. They're out on the lake and they're in this boat and like the waves start getting really big and the wind starts to blow and the rain's coming and they're just up and down and people are thrown up over the edge of the boat because it's so bad and they're like, we're going to die. Where's Jesus? And everybody's looking for Jesus. And where's Jesus? He's sleeping. He's sleeping in the stern of the boat, and they go over to him, and they're like upset, and they're like, Jesus, we're going to die. Don't you care? How does he say? What does he say? Why do you have so little faith? And he gets up, and he's in the midst of this storm. What does he say? Peace. Peace. Be still. And the waves calm down. And the wind stops blowing. Everything's okay. You see, the truth is, even when life seems out of control, God hasn't left us. God's still with us. He's still in control. He's in control when you're in surgery. He's in control when you lose that loved one. He's in control when you get that bad diagnosis. He's in control when you get laid off. He's in control when someone you've been in contact with contracts coronavirus. He's in control when there's a presidential election. He's in control. When it seems like you're out of control, when it seems like things can't get any worse, He's able to show up in your life, just like He did in the boat on that lake, and say, peace. Peace. Be still. And if He's in control, my friends, then we can have the confidence to go to Him for wisdom and insight, just like Joseph in this chapter. In our waiting, we need to remember that God is in control. And so just today as we close, I wonder how many of us on this 2020 detour are tired of waiting. Tired of having things happen in our life right now that are causing us to say, how long, God? How long? How long do we have to endure this? When is this going to end? Because I want to encourage you today, like Joseph, keep being faithful. Keep being faithful. Keep on keeping on. Keep on trusting the Lord. He's in control. He knows it's 2020, right? He wasn't thinking, oh no, what are we going to do when 2020 gets here? I don't know. It's not, No, God's got this. It's part of His plan. It's just another detour along the way. And listen, friends, if you're not following Lord today, whether you're watching online or in one of our services, this is a great day to start. 2020 could be the best year of your life. You could come to know Jesus. You could say, Jesus, I'm tired of feeling out of control. I need you in my life. Come dwell in my life. Bring your peace to my life. Bring your presence. Bring your confidence and your stability, and take what's broken and wrong and begin to fix it and make it right. I'm sorry, Lord, I've messed things up and I need you. Man, what a great day. What a great year to start trusting the Lord, to learn to be faithful, to learn to love your neighbor, to start sharing the gospel. I've been thinking about this. This has been on my heart, and I don't want to make light of it. Did you know that people are still dying? People out there are still dying. I mean, I talked to Pastor Ray, and he works at the funeral home, and every time I talk to him, he's swamped. Like, people didn't quit dying because it was coronavirus. They didn't quit dying because it was 2020. No, if anything, death has increased. And people are dying without knowing Jesus. Just think about that. If anything, the people around us, our friends, our neighbors, our community, need the church to be active now more than ever. This isn't a time to pull back. It's not a time to say, oh no, what are we going to do? Gotta make sure everybody's safe. It's not a time to pull back. It's a time to press forward, to be wise and use good judgment, absolutely. But the world needs us to be faithful while we're waiting for this whole coronavirus thing to straighten out. Because hanging on to this life is not worth the cost of forfeiting it for the next. For anyone. For me, for you, for my neighbor, for my coworker. Just let that sink in. Hanging on to this life is not worth the cost of forfeiting the next. Detours require us to wait. They do. But in our waiting, let's be faithful. Let's be faithful. Let's keep pressing on. Because God is in control.